Love is not your problem. Fear is. You don't lose people because you love too much. You lose peace because you fear too deeply. Fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough, fear of losing control. And that fear quietly poisons everything: your thoughts, your actions, your relationships. This audiobook is not about finding better people to love. It's about building a stronger mind that can love without collapsing. Because peaceful love is not soft, it is disciplined, it is controlled, it is fearless. If your mind is weak, your love will suffer. But if your mind is strong, your love becomes unbreakable.
Chapter 1. Stop chasing love and start building yourself. Listen carefully, because this is where everything changes. You think you're chasing love, but you're not. You're chasing validation. You're chasing reassurance. You're chasing someone to confirm that you are enough. And that is exactly why you keep losing. Because the moment you start chasing, you give away your power. You lower your value. You weaken your presence. You tell the world without saying a word, "I need you more than I need myself." And that's the beginning of dependency. Let's be honest. When you chase someone, what are you really doing? You check your phone constantly. You overanalyze every message. You wait for replies like your peace depends on it. You start adjusting your behavior. You say less, or worse, you say more trying to impress. You lose your natural rhythm. You stop being yourself. That's the cost of chasing. You don't just lose them, you lose you. Understand this clearly. Chasing creates pressure. Building creates attraction. People don't feel drawn to desperation. They feel drawn to stability. They feel drawn to someone who is grounded, someone who is focused, someone who is not easily shaken. That kind of person doesn't chase. That kind of person builds. You have a choice. You can spend your energy trying to be chosen, or you can become someone worth choosing. That's the key. When you chase, your focus is external. What do they think of me? Do they like me? Am I enough for them? But when you build yourself, your focus shifts inward. Am I proud of myself? Am I growing? Am I becoming stronger? That shift changes everything. Because here's the truth most people don't want to hear. No one respects someone who is constantly seeking approval. They may tolerate it, they may use it, but they don't respect it. And without respect, love cannot survive. You don't need their permission to become powerful. You don't need their attention to feel valuable. You don't need their validation to exist with confidence. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Let's break the illusion. You think if you try harder, text more, care more, give more, they will finally choose you. No, they will get comfortable and you will get exhausted. Because chasing doesn't create desire, it kills it. Think about it. What feels more valuable? Something that is always available, or something that has standards? Something that is always trying to prove itself, or something that already knows its worth? That's the difference. You have been trained to believe love is about effort, but not all effort is equal. Effort toward others without effort toward yourself is self-neglect. That's not love. That's imbalance. So what do you do instead? You build. You build your mind. You build your habits. You build your confidence. You build a life that doesn't collapse if someone walks away. That's power. Start with your identity. Who are you without them? If you remove their attention, their messages, their presence. Who are you? If that question makes you uncomfortable, good, because that's where the work begins. You don't build attraction by trying to be liked. You build attraction by becoming someone solid, someone disciplined, someone who has direction, someone who doesn't bend just to be accepted. Say it with me. I don't chase. I attract by becoming. Again, I don't chase. I attract by becoming. This is not just a sentence. This is a mindset. When you wake up in the morning, your first thought should not be about them. It should be about your growth, your goals, your discipline, your progress. Because every time you choose yourself, you rebuild your power. And here's what happens next. Something shifts. You stop overthinking. You stop waiting. You stop needing constant attention. You become calm. And calm is attractive. People can feel it. They can sense when you are not desperate, when you are not chasing, when you are not trying to prove anything. And suddenly, they lean in. Not because you begged, but because you stopped. That's the paradox. The more you chase, the more you pull people away. The more you build yourself, the more you pull the right people in. But let's be clear, this is not a trick. This is not manipulation. You're not pretending not to care. You are genuinely becoming someone who doesn't depend on others for worth. That's real, that's rare, and that's powerful. You have a choice every single day. Chase or build. Seek approval or create value. Lose yourself or become yourself. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable at first because you're breaking a habit. You're stepping away from needing validation. You're choosing discipline over emotion. That's not easy, but it's necessary. Because if you don't build yourself, you will always chase someone else. Different person, same pattern, again and again, until you decide, enough. You don't need their attention to feel alive. You don't need their messages to feel important. You don't need their presence to feel complete. You are already enough, but you have to build that belief daily. So here's your mission. Shift your focus. Stop asking, how can I make them like me? Start asking, how can I become stronger today? That's the key. Train your mind. Discipline your actions, respect your time, protect your energy, and most importantly, build yourself. Because when you build yourself, you stop chasing, you stop begging, you stop losing control, and you gain something far more valuable: self-respect. Chapter takeaway. You don't attract better people by chasing harder. You attract better people by becoming better yourself. Say it one last time. I don't chase, I attract by becoming. Hold on to that, because in the next chapter, we go deeper. We attack the root of your fear, the fear that makes you chase in the first place. Chapter 2. Kill the fear of losing people. Listen carefully, because this fear is controlling your life more than you think. You say you want love, you say you want peace, you say you want stability, but your actions tell a different story. Your actions say, I'm afraid they will leave. I'm afraid I'm not enough. I'm afraid to lose this. And that fear is shaping everything you do. Let's be honest, the fear of losing people is not love. It's insecurity. It's attachment built on instability. It's the belief that your happiness depends on someone staying. And that belief is dangerous because it makes you weak. When you are afraid to lose someone, you stop being yourself. You become careful. You become anxious. You become someone who is constantly trying to maintain something instead of naturally living it. You overthink your words, you replay conversations, you try to avoid conflict at all costs. Why? Because you think, if I mess this up, they'll leave. And here's the truth you need to accept. They can leave anyway. No matter how perfect you try to be, no matter how careful you act, no matter how much you give, people can still walk away. That's reality. So ask yourself, if they can leave no matter what you do, then why are you destroying yourself trying to prevent it? You have a choice. Live in fear or live in truth. That's the key. The truth is simple. You cannot control who stays in your life. You can only control who you become. Say that again. You can't control who stays, you control who you become. But your mind doesn't like that. Your mind wants certainty. Your mind wants guarantees. Your mind wants to believe if I do everything right, they will never leave. That's an illusion. And that illusion is costing you your peace. Because the more you try to control the outcome, the more anxious you become. The more attached you become, the more afraid you become. Fear creates desperation. Desperation creates bad decisions, and bad decisions push people away. So the very thing you're trying to avoid, you actually create. That's why you must kill this fear, not reduce it, not manage it, kill it. Let's go deeper. Why are you so afraid of losing people? It's not really about them, it's about what you believe losing them means. You think it means, I'm not enough, I failed, I'll be alone forever. But those are stories, not facts. Losing someone does not mean you are unworthy. It does not mean you are unlovable. It does not mean your life is over. It means one thing: they were not meant to stay. And yes, that's hard to accept, but it's also freeing, because when you accept that, you stop clinging, you stop forcing, you live in fear. You have a choice: hold on tightly or stand firmly. Strong people don't hold on out of fear. They allow, they observe, they accept. If someone stays, good. If someone leaves, fine. Because their identity is not dependent on others. That's the level you need to reach. Right now, your fear is making you negotiate your self-respect. You tolerate behavior you shouldn't accept. You ignore red flags. You stay silent when you should speak, all because you're afraid to lose them. But let me ask you something. What are you really losing? Them or yourself? Because every time you silence your truth, you lose yourself. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you lose yourself. Every time you act out of fear, you lose control. And losing yourself is far worse than losing anyone else. Say it clearly. I will not lose myself to keep someone else. Again, I will not lose myself to keep someone else. That's the key. When you remove the fear of losing people, something powerful happens. You become calm. You become clear. You become selective. You stop trying to impress. You stop trying to please. You stop trying to control. And you start observing. You watch how people act. You see their patterns. You notice their consistency or lack of it. And instead of reacting emotionally, you respond with awareness. That's power. Because now you are no longer afraid of the outcome. You are focused on the truth. And the truth always reveals itself over time. You have to understand this. Fear blinds you. It makes you ignore reality. It makes you see potential instead of patterns. It makes you hold on to what could be instead of accepting what is. And that's how people stay stuck for months, for years, holding on to illusions. not you, not anymore. From now on, you operate differently. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't fear loss. You observe, you decide, you act with self-respect. Because you finally understand, anyone who can leave is already not yours, and anyone who truly values you won't require you to abandon yourself. You don't need their permission to walk away. You don't need their approval to set boundaries. You don't need their presence to feel complete. Say it again. You don't need their permission. Let's lock this in. The fear of losing people is not protecting you. It is limiting you. It is shrinking your confidence. It is controlling your behavior, and it is destroying your peace. So you end it. Right here, right now. You accept loss. You accept uncertainty. You accept that not everyone is meant to stay. And instead of fearing that, you build strength from it. Because when you are no longer afraid to lose, you stop settling. You stop chasing. You stop overthinking. And for the first time, you experience real freedom. Chapter takeaway. You are not afraid of losing people. You are afraid of losing yourself. So choose strength, choose truth, choose self-respect. Say it one last time. I can lose anyone and still be whole. Hold on to that, because in the next chapter, we refine this power even further. We learn how to stay in control emotionally without becoming cold. Chapter 3. Detach without becoming cold. Pay attention, because this is where most people get it wrong. They hear detach, and they think it means stop caring. They think it means becoming distant, emotionless, cold. That's not strength, that's avoidance. Real detachment is not about shutting down your emotions. It's about controlling them. It's about feeling everything without letting it control your actions. That's the difference. You don't need to become cold to protect yourself. You need to become stable. Say it again. You don't need to become cold. You need to become stable. That's the key. Right now, your problem is not that you feel too much. Your problem is that you react too quickly. Someone ignores you, you panic. Someone changes tone, you overthink. Someone pulls away, you chase. You feel, and then you lose control. Detachment fixes that, not by removing emotion, but by creating space between feeling and action. You have a choice: react instantly or respond intentionally. That small space, that pause, is where your power lives. Let's break it down. When you're attached in an unhealthy way, you do this. You take everything personally. You depend on their behavior to feel okay. You need constant reassurance, and when you don't get it, you spiral. But when you are detached in a healthy way, you still care, you still feel, you still love, but you don't lose yourself in the process. Someone takes longer to reply. You don't panic. You continue your day. Someone acts differently. You don't assume the worst. You observe. Someone pulls away. You don't chase. You give space. That's detachment. Calm, controlled, clear. Say it with me. I feel deeply, but I stay in control. Again, I feel deeply, but I stay in control. This is what emotional strength looks like. Not silence, not distance, control. Because let's be honest, your biggest mistakes didn't come from a lack of love. They came from emotional reactions, sending that message too fast, saying things you didn't mean, acting out of fear instead of clarity. That's what damages relationships. not your feelings, your lack of control over them. So what do? You train yourself to pause. Before you text, pause. Before you react, pause. Before you assume, pause. That pause will save you from regret every time. You don't need to respond immediately. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to fix everything right away. Say it clearly. I don't rush. I stay in control. Detachment also means you stop tying your worth to someone's behavior. If they're happy, you're happy. If they're distant, you're anxious. That's not balance. That's dependence. Your emotions should not rise and fall based on someone else's mood. That's unstable. That's exhausting. Instead, you stay grounded. You stay consistent, no matter what they do. That's power. Let's go deeper. Detachment requires trust. Not trust in them, trust in yourself. Trust that you will be okay no matter what happens. Trust that you can handle distance, handle silence, handle change. Because when you trust yourself, you stop fearing emotional discomfort. And when you stop fearing discomfort, you stop reacting impulsively. You have a choice. Control your emotions or let them control you. And understand this, detachment is not something you switch on overnight. It's built through repetition, daily. Every time you choose not to overreact, you get stronger. Every time you stay calm under pressure, you build control. Every time you don't chase, you reinforce your value. This is training, mental training, emotional discipline. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable because you're breaking patterns. You're stepping away from habits that once felt natural. But those habits were not serving you. They were hurting you. So you replace them with awareness, with control, with intention. Now let's address something important. Detachment does not mean you tolerate bad behavior. It does not mean you ignore disrespect. It does not mean you accept less. In fact, detachment makes your standards stronger because now you're not blinded by emotion. You see clearly. You act accordingly. Someone disrespects you? You don't argue emotionally. You step back. You decide. Someone shows inconsistency? You don't chase clarity. You observe patterns. That's the difference. You're no longer reacting out of fear. You're responding with self-respect. Say it again. I feel deeply, but I stay in control. Lock that in. Because once you master this, your relationships change. Your energy changes. Your presence changes. You become calm. And calm is powerful. People notice. They feel it. They sense that you are not easily shaken, not easily controlled, not easily pulled into chaos. And that energy creates respect. Not because you demanded it, but because you became it. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their validation to feel secure. You don't need their consistency to stay grounded. Your control comes from within, always. So from this point forward, you don't react instantly. You don't assume quickly. You don't lose control emotionally. You pause, you observe, you respond. That's your new standard. Chapter takeaway. Detachment is not about caring less, it's about controlling more. You don't lose your emotions, you master them. Say it one last time. I feel deeply, but I stay in control. Hold on to that. Because in the next chapter, we go even deeper into your mind. We eliminate the need for constant reassurance, the silent habit that keeps you dependent. Chapter 4. Stop seeking constant reassurance. Listen closely, because this habit is quietly destroying your confidence. You may not even notice it, but it's there, in your questions, in your messages, in your thoughts. Do they still like me? Are we okay? Did I do something wrong? You keep checking, you keep asking, you keep needing confirmation, and every time you do, you weaken yourself. Let's be clear. Reassurance feels good for a moment. It calms you down. It gives you relief. It makes you feel safe. But it doesn't make you strong. It makes you dependent. Because the moment you rely on someone else to calm your mind, you lose control of it. That's the truth. You have a choice. Depend on reassurance or build self-trust. That's the key. Right now, your mind is trained to look outward. Whenever you feel uncertainty, you seek answers from others. You wait for their reply, their tone, their validation, and until you get it, you feel unstable. That's not confidence. That's emotional reliance. Strong people don't need constant reassurance, not because they don't care, but because they trust themselves. They trust their judgment, they trust their worth, they trust their ability to handle outcomes. Say it clearly. I trust myself more than I seek approval. Again, I trust myself more than I seek approval. Let's go deeper. Why do you seek reassurance? Because you don't trust your own interpretation. You doubt yourself. You think, maybe I'm overthinking. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'll lose them. So you ask again and again. But here's the problem. The more you ask for reassurance, the less you trust yourself. And the less you trust yourself, the more you need reassurance. It's a cycle, and it never ends until you break it. You break it by choosing silence, not silence as avoidance, silence as strength. You don't need to ask every time you feel unsure. You don't need to confirm every emotion. You don't need to chase clarity in every moment. Sometimes you sit with the uncertainty. You observe it, you let it pass. Because not every feeling requires action. Say it again. Not every feeling requires action. Most of your anxiety comes from your imagination, not reality. You create stories in your mind. You assume the worst. You expect rejection. And then you look for reassurance to fix a problem that doesn't even exist. That's the trap. So what do you do instead? You challenge your thoughts. When your mind says they're losing interest, you ask, where is the evidence? When your mind says, I'm not enough, you respond, that's a belief, not a fact. When your mind starts to spiral, you don't run to someone else, you ground yourself. That's control. You don't need someone else to regulate your emotions. You can do that yourself. Take a breath, pause, step back. You have a choice. React to every thought, or question it. That's the key. Let's be honest again. Constant reassurance is exhausting, not just for you, but for the other person. At first, they may comfort you. They may respond. They may try to help. But over time, it becomes pressure. It becomes responsibility. It becomes something they have to manage. And that changes the dynamic. You don't want someone to feel like they have to constantly prove their care. You want them to choose it naturally, freely.
But they can't do that if you're always asking. That's why you stop. Not because you don't care, but because you respect yourself. You respect your ability to handle uncertainty. You respect your emotional independence. Say it again. I trust myself more than I seek approval. Lock that in. Now, understand this. Reassurance is not bad, but needing it constantly is a sign of inner instability. Your goal is not to eliminate reassurance completely. Your goal is to reduce your dependence on it, to the point where you don't need it to feel okay. You feel okay because you trust yourself. That's real confidence. You don't need their message to calm down. You don't need their words to feel secure. You don't need their attention to feel valued. You create that within yourself. Daily, through discipline, through awareness, through repetition. Every time you choose not to seek reassurance, you get stronger. Every time you sit with uncertainty, you build resilience. Every time you trust yourself, you break the cycle. This is how you grow. It won't feel easy at first. Your mind will push back. It will want to go back to old habits. It will tell you, just ask, just check, just confirm. But you don't listen. You pause. You breathe. You choose control. Because now you are building something stronger than temporary comfort. You are building self-trust. And once you have that, everything changes. You become calmer, more stable, more grounded. You stop overthinking every small detail. You stop needing constant answers. You stop depending on others for emotional security. That's freedom. And that's what makes your love stronger. Because now you're not loving from fear, you're loving from stability. You don't need their permission to feel secure. You don't need their validation to feel worthy. You don't need their reassurance to feel okay. You already are. Chapter takeaway. Reassurance gives temporary comfort. Self-trust gives permanent stability. Stop asking others to calm your mind. Learn to calm it yourself. Say it one last time. I trust myself more than I seek approval. Hold on to that. Because in the next chapter, we take control of something even more dangerous, your imagination, the place where most of your fear is created. Chapter 5. Control your imagination before it controls you. Listen carefully, because most of your suffering is not coming from reality. It's coming from your imagination. Nothing has happened yet, but your mind is already reacting. You create scenarios, you assume outcomes, you predict rejection, and then you feel anxiety as if it's already real. That's the trap. Your mind is powerful, but undisciplined, it becomes dangerous. You think you're responding to facts, but most of the time, you're reacting to thoughts. Let's be honest. How many times have you ruined your own mood without anything actually happening? You saw a late reply, you noticed a different tone, you felt a slight change, and instantly your mind filled in the gaps. They're losing interest. They found someone else. I did something wrong. No proof, no confirmation, just imagination. And yet your body reacts. Your emotions spike. Your behavior changes. You start overthinking. You start doubting. You start preparing for something that isn't even real. That's the cost of an uncontrolled mind. You have a choice. Control your imagination or let it control you. That's the key. Your imagination is not the enemy. It's a tool. But if you don't control it, it will create fear. It will create insecurity. It will create problems that don't exist. Say it clearly. Not every thought deserves my belief. Again, not every thought deserves my belief. Right now, you believe everything your mind tells you, and that's the problem. Your mind is not always telling the truth. It is telling stories based on fear, based on past experiences, based on insecurity. And if you don't question those stories, they become your reality. Let's break this down. A thought appears. They haven't replied. Something is wrong. You have two options. Option 1, believe it, react to it, spiral into anxiety. Option 2, pause, question it, stay grounded. That pause is everything. Because once you pause, you create distance between you and the thought. And in that distance, you gain control. You don't need to fight every thought. You don't need to suppress them. You just need to observe them, like a watcher, not a reactor. Thought comes in. They don't care about me. Instead of reacting, you say, that's a thought, not a fact, and you let it pass. That's discipline. Your goal is not to have fewer thoughts. Your goal is to believe fewer of them. Because most of your painful thoughts are not real. They are assumptions, they are fears, they are patterns from the past, and they are controlling your present. You don't need their permission to stop overthinking. You don't need their reassurance to calm your mind. You don't need their behavior to stay stable. Your control comes from within. Let's go deeper. Why does your imagination go negative so quickly? Because your brain is wired for survival. It looks for threats. It prepares for danger. It expects the worst to protect you. But in modern life, that survival instinct becomes overactive. Now, a delayed message feels like rejection. A change in tone feels like abandonment. Silence feels like loss. But those are misinterpretations. Your brain is reacting to emotional discomfort as if it's physical danger. And that's why you must retrain it. You retrain it through awareness, through repetition, through control. Every time your mind jumps to a negative conclusion, you interrupt it. You say, "Where is the evidence?" Most of the time, there is none. And when there is no evidence, you don't react. You stay neutral. Neutral is powerful because neutral keeps you grounded. Neutral keeps you calm. Neutral keeps you in control. Say it again. Not every thought deserves my belief. Let's be real. Your imagination has created more problems than reality ever did. You've stressed over things that never happened. You've felt pain from situations that weren't real. You've acted out of fear based on assumptions, and those actions caused real consequences. That's how dangerous it is. So you stop right here. You stop letting your imagination run unchecked. You stop believing every thought. You stop reacting to assumptions. Instead, you slow down. You breathe. You observe. You return to reality. Because reality is always calmer than your imagination. Reality is simple. What is actually happening right now. Not what might happen, not what could happen. What is happening. Focus on that. Stay there. That's where your peace is. You have a choice. Live in imagined fear or live in present clarity. And understand this, when you control your imagination, you control your emotions. When you control your emotions, you control your actions. And when you control your actions, you control your life. That's the chain. Break it at the source, your thoughts. Because once your thoughts are disciplined, everything else follows. You become calmer, more stable, less reactive. You stop creating problems. You stop assuming the worst. You stop living in fear. And that changes your relationships. Now, you respond with clarity. You act with confidence. You stay grounded no matter what happens. That's power. Not control over others, control over yourself. Say it one more time. Not every thought deserves my belief. Lock that in. Chapter takeaway. Your imagination can either build your peace or destroy it. The difference is control. Stop believing every thought. Start questioning them. Stay grounded in reality. Hold on to that, because in the next chapter, we take this control even further. We train your emotional reactions so you stop reacting impulsively and start responding with discipline. Chapter 6. Build emotional discipline daily. Listen carefully, because this is where everything becomes real. You've understood your fear. You've seen your patterns. You've started to control your thoughts. But none of that matters if you can't control your actions. Emotional discipline is the bridge between what you feel and what you do. Right now, that bridge is weak. You feel something and you react instantly. No pause, no control, no awareness. That's why you keep making the same mistakes, not because you don't know better, but because you don't act better. You have a choice: react emotionally or respond intentionally. That's the key. Let's be honest, most of your regrets didn't come from what you felt. They came from what you did with those feelings. You sent that message too quickly. You said something out of anger. You chased when you should have stepped back. Emotion took over. Control disappeared. And now you want to change that. Good, because emotional discipline is trainable. It's not something you're born with. It's something you build daily. Say it clearly. I respond. I don't react. Again, I respond. I don't react. This is your new standard. Let's break it down. A situation happens. You feel something. Anger, fear, anxiety, excitement. That's normal. You're human. But what you do next, that's where discipline begins. Most people skip the pause. They go straight from feeling to action. You don't. You pause. That pause is your power. In that moment, you ask yourself, what is the right response, not the emotional reaction? That question changes everything. Because emotions are temporary, but actions have consequences. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their approval to take your time. You don't need to respond immediately. Say it again. I respond. I don't react. Let's make it practical. Someone ignores your message. Your emotion says, they don't care. Your impulse says, send another message. But your discipline says, pause. You wait. You observe. You don't chase. That's control. Another example. Someone says something that triggers you. Your emotion says, defend yourself immediately. Your impulse says, react, prove your point. But your discipline says, pause. You take a breath. You think. You respond calmly. That's strength. Understand this. Emotional discipline is not suppression. You're not ignoring your feelings. You're managing them. You feel anger, but you don't explode. You feel anxiety, but you don't panic. You feel fear, but you don't chase. That's mastery. And it's built through repetition. Every time you pause, you strengthen your control. Every time you choose a calm response, you train your mind. Every time you resist the urge to react, you build discipline. This is daily work. Not once, not sometimes, every single day. Because your habits are strong, your patterns are automatic, and breaking them requires consistency. You have a choice. Follow your impulses or train your responses. That's the key. Let's go deeper. Why do you react so quickly? Because you're uncomfortable with emotion. You feel something intense and you want to escape it immediately. So you act, you send, you speak, you chase. Not because it's right, but because it relieves the feeling. Temporarily. But that temporary relief creates long-term problems. So instead, you learn to sit with the emotion. You feel it without acting on it. That's discipline. Say it again. I can feel without reacting. Lock that in. This is where most people fail, because sitting with discomfort is hard. But that's exactly why it's powerful. Because when you can sit with discomfort, you are no longer controlled by it. And when you are no longer controlled, you become stable. Let's make it clear. Discipline is not about being perfect. You will slip. You will react sometimes. But the goal is progress, more awareness, more pauses, more control. Over time, it becomes natural. You stop reacting instantly. You stop making emotional decisions. You stop creating unnecessary problems. And your life becomes calmer. Your relationships become stronger. Because now you are predictable, stable, grounded. People can trust your reactions. They can trust your responses. And most importantly, you can trust yourself. That's the real win. You don't need their permission to be calm. You don't need their behavior to stay stable. You don't need external control when you have internal discipline. That's power. So, from now on, you slow down. You don't rush to respond. You don't react to every trigger. You don't let emotions dictate your actions. You pause. You think. You respond. Every time. Say it one more time. I respond. I don't react. Lock that in. Chapter takeaway. Your emotions are not the problem. Your reactions are. Master the pause. Train your response. That's emotional discipline. Hold on to that, because in the next chapter, we fix another pattern that destroys your control. Overinvesting too quickly. The habit that makes you give too much before it's earned. Chapter 7. Stop overinvesting too quickly. Listen carefully, because this habit is costing you more than you realize. You give too much, too fast. Your time, your energy, your attention, your emotions, all at once. And then you wonder why it falls apart. Let's be honest. You don't build connection. You rush it. You feel a spark, and you turn it into a fire overnight. You start imagining a future. You start prioritizing them. You start giving them access to your time, your thoughts, your emotions, before they've earned it. That's overinvesting. And it always leads to the same result: disappointment. Because you're not responding to reality. You're responding to potential. You see what could be instead of what is. Say it clearly. I invest based on reality, not potential. Again, I invest based on reality, not potential. That's the key. Right now, you're skipping the process. You're trying to feel something deep before it's built. But real connection takes time, consistency, observation, patience. You can't rush that. You have a choice. Invest slowly or lose control quickly. Let's break it down. When you overinvest, you create imbalance. You give more than they give. You care more than they care. You think more than they think. And that imbalance creates anxiety. Because now you have more to lose. You start worrying. You start overthinking. You fear that they won't match your energy. And most of the time, they don't. Not because they're bad, but because you moved too fast. You skipped steps. You ignored the process. And now you're emotionally ahead of reality. That's dangerous. Because when your emotions move faster than reality, you lose clarity. You stop observing. You stop evaluating. You stop seeing things as they are. Instead, you see what you want to see. That's how you miss red flags. That's how you ignore inconsistency. That's how you get attached to the wrong person. Not because they tricked you, but because you rushed. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need to match their pace. You don't need to prove your interest by giving everything. Say it again. I invest slowly and wisely. This is your new rule. Let people earn access to you. Your time is valuable. Your energy is limited. Your emotions are powerful. Not everyone deserves full access immediately. They earn it through consistency, through effort, through time. That's how you protect yourself. Not by being cold, but by being disciplined. Let's go deeper. Why do you overinvest? Because you're afraid of losing the opportunity. You think, if I don't give enough, they'll leave. So you give more. Too much. Too soon.
But that doesn't make them stay. It makes you lose control. Because now your happiness depends on something unstable. You've given too much before trust was built. That's the mistake. You don't build strong connections through intensity. You build them through consistency. Slow, steady, clear. Say it again. I invest slowly and wisely. Lock that in. Now understand this. Real value is revealed over time. You don't know someone in a few days. You don't understand their patterns in a few conversations. You don't see their true character instantly. That takes time. So you take your time. You observe. You watch how they act, not what they say. Because words are easy. Effort is real. Consistency is truth. When you slow down, you see more. You notice patterns. You catch red flags early. You stay grounded in reality. That's power. And here's what happens next. You stop getting attached too quickly. You stop building expectations too early. You stop creating emotional dependency before it's earned. And because of that, you stay in control. That's the goal. Not to feel less, but to feel at the right time. You don't need to rush connection. You don't need to force depth. You don't need to create something that isn't ready. You let it grow, naturally. You have a choice. Rush and regret, or slow down and stay in control. That's the key. Let's make it practical. You meet someone new. There's interest. There's curiosity. Old you jumps in fully, texts constantly, shares everything, prioritizes them immediately. New you moves with awareness. You engage, but you don't rush. You show interest, but you keep your balance. You stay consistent, but you don't overextend. That's discipline. You don't give everything at once. You give in layers, as they earn it. That's how you protect your energy. And when you protect your energy, you protect your peace. You don't need their attention to feel valuable. You don't need their presence to feel complete. You don't need to give everything to feel connected. You stay grounded, always. Say it one more time. I invest slowly and wisely. Chapter takeaway. Fast attachment leads to fast disappointment. Slow investment builds real connection. Stop giving everything at once. Let people earn your depth. Hold on to that, because in the next chapter, we take control even further. We eliminate the illusion that you can control others and replace it with something far more powerful. Listen carefully, because this truth will either free you or frustrate you. You cannot control other people. Not their thoughts, not their feelings, not their actions, no matter how hard you try. But right now, you're still trying. You try to say the right things. You try to act perfectly. You try to avoid mistakes. Why? Because you believe if I do everything right, they will stay. That's the illusion. You think control creates security, but it doesn't. It creates anxiety. Because the more you try to control something outside of you, the more unstable you feel inside. You have a choice: control others or control yourself. That's the key. Let's be honest. How often do you try to manage someone else's behavior? You overthink your messages. You adjust your tone. You hold back your truth, all to influence how they respond. That's control. And it comes from fear. Fear of losing them. Fear of rejection. Fear of not being enough. So you try to manage the outcome. But here's the reality. You can do everything right, and they can still choose differently. They can still pull away. They can still lose interest. They can still leave. Not because you failed, but because they are their own person. Say it clearly. I control myself, not others. Again, I control myself, not others. This is where your power shifts. Instead of trying to control their actions, you focus on your standards. Instead of trying to predict their behavior, you observe it. Instead of trying to force an outcome, you accept reality. That's strength. Because control is an illusion. You don't control their feelings. You don't control their consistency. You don't control their effort. You only control your response. Let's go deeper. Why do you try to control others? Because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. You want guarantees. You want clarity. You want to know, where is this going? What do they feel? What will happen next? But life doesn't work like that. There are no guarantees. There is no full control. There is only reality and your ability to handle it. That's it. When you try to control others, you lose focus on yourself. You stop growing. You stop building. You stop improving. Because all your energy is going outward. And the more energy you give away, the less power you have. So you take it back. You stop trying to manage people. You stop trying to predict outcomes.
You stop trying to force connection. Instead, you observe. You watch what they do. Not what they say, not what you hope, what they actually do. Because behavior tells the truth. Say it again. I control myself, not others. This mindset changes everything.
Now, you're not attached to outcomes. You're attached to standards. If someone shows effort, you match it. If someone shows inconsistency, you step back. If someone disrespects you, you walk away. No drama, no chasing, no forcing. That's control. Not over them, over yourself. You don't need their permission to walk away. You don't need their approval to set boundaries. You don't need their cooperation to protect your peace. You decide. That's power. Let's be clear. Accepting that you can't control others does not make you weak. It makes you free. Free from anxiety, free from overthinking, free from constant stress. Because now you're not trying to manage something impossible. You're focused on something real, yourself, your actions, your discipline, your standards. That's where your control lives. You have a choice. Waste energy controlling others or invest energy controlling yourself. That's the key. And here's what happens when you truly accept this. You become calm. You stop stressing over every little change. You stop trying to decode every action. You stop chasing clarity. Because you understand, people reveal themselves over time, and you don't need to rush that process. You trust it. That trust creates peace. You're no longer trying to force things to work. You're allowing things to reveal themselves, and that changes everything. Because now you don't hold on to potential, you respond to reality. If someone is consistent, you move forward. If someone is not, you step back. Simple. No overthinking, no emotional chaos, just clarity. Say it one more time. I control myself, not others. Lock that in. In the next chapter, we take this even further. We raise your standards and remove the fear that makes you accept less than you deserve. Last chapter. Love without attachment to outcome. Listen carefully, because this is the final level. This is where everything you've learned comes together. You've stopped chasing. You've faced your fear. You've built discipline. You've raised your standards. Now there's one thing left. Let go of the outcome. This is where most people fail. They say they love, but what they really do is expect. They expect consistency. They expect loyalty. They expect a specific result. And when those expectations are not met, they suffer. Not because of love, but because of attachment. Let's be clear, love is not the problem. Attachment to outcome is. You don't suffer because you care. You suffer because you need a specific result. You need them to stay. You need them to act a certain way. You need things to go how you imagined. And when reality doesn't match your expectations, you feel pain. That's attachment. You have a choice: love freely or suffer from control. That's the key. Let's go deeper. What does it mean to love without attachment? It means you give your presence without needing guarantees. It means you care without losing yourself. It means you show up without forcing outcomes. You don't cling, you don't control, you don't demand. You allow. Say it clearly. I love fully without needing control. Again, I love fully without needing control. This is not weakness. This is strength.
because loving without attachment requires confidence. Confidence that you will be okay no matter what happens. Confidence that your peace does not depend on someone else's choices. Confidence that you can give love without losing control. That's rare. Most people love with fear. They love with conditions. They love with expectations. And that creates pressure. Pressure to perform, pressure to stay, pressure to meet expectations. And pressure destroys connection. Real love is not forced. It flows, naturally, freely, without control. You don't need their permission to love. You don't need their guarantee to care. You don't need certainty to show up fully. You choose to love because it reflects who you are, not because it guarantees an outcome. That's the difference. When you are attached to the outcome, you become anxious, you overthink, you try to control, you fear loss constantly. But when you let go, you become calm. You stay present. You enjoy the connection. You accept reality. That's freedom. Let's be honest. You've been taught to believe that love must lead somewhere, that it must become something permanent, that it must follow a certain path. But life doesn't work like that. Some connections are temporary. Some people are lessons. Some relationships are not meant to last. And that's okay. Because the value of love is not in how long it lasts. It's in how honestly it's given. Say it again. I love fully, without needing control. When you live like this, you stop fearing endings, because you understand an ending does not erase your experience. It does not reduce your worth. It does not define your value. It simply means that chapter is complete, and you are still whole. That's the mindset. You don't cling to what's leaving. You don't force what's not working. You don't hold on to what's already fading. You let go with strength, with clarity, with self-respect. Because you know you can love again. You can build again. You can grow again. You are not defined by one outcome. You have a choice. Hold on tightly or stand freely. That's the key. Let's bring everything together. You don't chase, you build yourself. You don't fear loss, you accept it. You don't react emotionally, you respond with discipline. You don't seek constant reassurance, you trust yourself. You don't let your imagination control you, you stay grounded in reality. You don't overinvest, you move with awareness. You don't try to control others, you control yourself. You don't lower your standards, you protect your value. And now, you don't attach to outcomes. You love freely. This is the complete shift. This is what it means to build a mind that loves without fear. Not perfect, not emotionless, but stable, strong, free. Say it one last time. I love fully without needing control. Lock that in. Final chapter takeaway. Love becomes painful when you try to control the outcome. Love becomes peaceful when you let go of it. You don't need guarantees to love. You don't need control to feel secure. You don't need a perfect ending to make it meaningful. You just need strength. And now you have it.